Hello, welcome to video 5, completing the Unwrapping Power Standards Organizer. We are going to go through the process of completing the Unwrapping Power Standards Organizer. This video contains a repeat of the steps from the previous video, but that's okay. The more you hear the steps, the more you will understand them, and it will be easier for you to complete the process. First, you need to have some materials available to you. You can either print them out and have handy, or just know where to access them online. You will go into your Google Drive, into your curriculum design folder, and remember, everything we're doing for this year with Unwrapping the Standards is located in the Unwrapping Standards folder. So double click, and you are going to see some materials that you will need for unwrapping. You're going to need your DOK chart, the DOK overview, the HES DOK matrix, and then also the Power Standard assignments for unwrapping. There's one for elementary, and there's one for secondary. These documents list in detail the standards you will be assigned to unwrap. You may pause the video at this time to locate or print these items and press play when you are ready to begin. So let's take a look at the Power Standards assignments for unwrapping. There is one for elementary and one for secondary. Looking at the secondary document, you will locate your name. So if you scroll down, you see everyone's name. You're going to locate your name, and below that is the subject you will be unwrapping for. To the cell on the right are the list of the standards you will be required to unwrap. For elementary, let's go back. Elementary is done in a spreadsheet with the grade levels listed at the bottom. So the first tab is kindergarten, first, and so on. Each school in elementary has been assigned a subject. For Couts, you were assigned math. Morgan has been assigned English Language Arts. And Washington has been assigned social studies. So when you look at your grade level tab, you will find your name, the subject, and in the cell are the standards you will be required to unwrap. I tried to make it as equal as possible between teachers on how many standards are being unwrapped. When assigning, it depended not only on how many teachers there are for the subject or grade level, but also how many power standards were selected for the subject. So now that you know what your assigned power standards are and where to locate them, it's time to look at our organizer. It's the Unwrapping Standards Organizer. So when I go down into my folder, I see Unwrapping Standards Organizer blank. I'm going to double click on that. And this is the worksheet where all of your work is going to be completed. Now, this document or worksheet will be used for each power standard you will unwrap. So let's start the process. First, you need to make a copy of this document that you can work in. If you don't make a copy of the document, you will be typing it in the original and others will be accessing it. So it's very important to first make a copy of your document. You go to File and make a copy. This is where you will rename your document. You will name it by subject and grade level if you're elementary or middle school, and the standards, the standard number. So let's say I'm a geometry teacher. I'm going to type my subject, period, and then I'm going to type in the standard. Let's say I'm assigned to GLP4. That's all I have to do. I click OK. Let's say I'm an elementary teacher doing English. So I'm going to start with my subject, PLA, period. let's say I'm a first grade teacher, and I am unwrapping standard 1.2. Okay, so again, you are going to list it by subject and standard. If you are an elementary or middle school teacher, do subject, grade level, standard. I'm going to do that as a sample. Subject, grade level. Remember, you're only putting the grade level if you are elementary or middle school, and the standard number. Once I have my document named, I click OK. You see the newly named document in the top left-hand corner. So here's my new name. This goes into your Google Drive. We are going to use the example standard from math from our last video. So the first thing I need to do is type in the information at the top. So here I put in red, don't forget to make a copy of this document before working. So that's just a little reminder for you. So let's say I'm going to be working in mathematics. I'm going to keep this all on the same line here. And that standard was from 3rd grade. The strand is the topic. So in your standards, strands for math are number sense, computation, algebraic thinking. So the strand from our standard in the example is geometry. So fill in the top, and then it lists for us step by step on what needs to be done. Step 1 is to type the standard, and actually it has write, but we want all of this done digitally so we can link it to our units of study. So you're going to be typing the standard in. So my standard, I want to start with the number, which is 3G3, and then I'm going to type the rest of the standard. Draw points, lines, line segments, rays, angles, acute, obtuse, right, and perpendicular, and parallel lines. Identify these in 2-dimensional figures. So step 1 is to type the standard. Step 2 is to underline the important nouns or noun phrases in the standard. These are the key concepts, what students should know. So I'm going to go find the nouns. And underline. In the standard. Step 3 is circle or highlight in blue the verbs in the standard. Now in Google Docs, the only way to circle a word is by going into Google Drawing, creating a shape with a text, inserting it. That's a lot of work. So for our purposes, I'm just going to say, hey, instead of doing a circle, let's go ahead and highlight those verbs in blue. So our verbs, draw, and we're going to highlight in blue, and we need to identify. Highlight in blue. So that's step 3. Step 4 is to organize the information. First, I list all of the concepts in the table here, and it tells me that first write the concepts nouns from the standard in the table below as a list. Okay. So when I first look at this, it doesn't seem to be a lot, but once I start typing everything in, you're going to notice there are quite a few concepts in this standard. Please ignore my phone, sorry about that. So line segments, rays, angles, And under angles, I'm going to make sure that I list the specific angles. Acute, obtuse, and right. Now notice in the table I have no more room to add, so if I right click, I'm going to insert a row below so I can keep going. So after angles, I have perpendicular lines and then parallel lines. And I also have two-dimensional figures. All right. So I wrote the concepts in the table. Next, write the skills or verbs in the table below. So if I go back up, I have draw and identify. But I want to take it a step further. I want to put in parentheses behind the skill the concepts that are linked to it. So I need to be, or my students need to be able to draw points, lines, line segments, rays, angles, perpendicular lines, parallel lines. There we go. They also need to be able to identify two-dimensional figures. All right. So now I have the concepts in the parentheses next to the skill, and that is a reminder to me of specifically what concept goes with what skill. And this is important when you get into higher level subject areas where the standards are a bit more complex. This is a very basic standard, so it might not be easy to see why you would do that, but as we get up, it does tend to get a little more cumbersome when unwrapping. So now we have a list of the concepts that our students need to know about, and we also have a list of the skills that the students need to be able to do. Now, next we have to write learning targets, or I can statements. I can statements are tied directly to the unwrapped concepts and skills. They clearly identify what the students will be able to know and do in student-friendly language. You use these learning targets with students at the beginning of your unit. You could say something like, by the end of this unit, these I can statements list what you should know and be able to do. You could have those listed in your classroom. Now I stated this in a previous video, but I feel that this needs to be mentioned again. Transferring your underlying concepts and your skills into this visual format might just seem like you're shuffling words around, but it's much more than that. Even though the first task is to separate the concepts from the skills, so we see that in the table here, the two do remain tightly connected. It's reorganizing the concepts and skills into this format that enables teachers to really grasp a standard's meaning and to determine its degree of cognitive challenge. So standard answers the question, where am I going in my learning? But when we write these learning targets for our students, they show the students the path to get there. So when I'm writing these I can learning statements, I know my students need to draw all of these concepts. I can draw points. I can draw lines. I can draw line segments. Now notice this is a very simplistic standard in terms of unwrapping, and I did that for a reason so we could just get the gist of how to complete this. I can draw rays. Now, what I want to point out here is I have these bullet points. They need to be listed as their own I can statement for each one. So I can draw acute angles. I can draw obtuse angles. I can draw right angles. I can draw perpendicular lines. I can draw parallel lines. Now, the two-dimensional figures goes with the skill identify. So now it's going to be, I can identify two-dimensional figures. So not only do I now have a list of my concepts and skills in this table to visually see, but I have my lesson plans pretty much laid out here. So I'm looking at my I can statements, and the next step, step 5, is to write each learning target in the order they should be taught. Again, this is a fairly simple standard to unwrap, so when I'm looking at this in terms of the order to be taught, the way it's written pretty much is the order you would teach it. But I'm going to put I can identify two-dimensional figures as my first concept that I need to teach. And we're going to put that in the table below here. Okay. And then I'm going to do I can draw points. And a lot of this comes down to your professional knowledge of your subject. What you know about kids and what they can do. I can draw lines, line segments. I'm just copying and pasting. Don't want to take the time to retype all of that. These are all going to go in separate. Ran out of room, so I'm going to insert a row below. There we go. So now I have my learning targets listed in the order that they should be taught. And I'm going to number them. Now we have really our lesson plans, don't we? So this takes that one standard and breaks it down into specifically what skills and concepts our students need to know in order to master this standard. Step 6 is to add the DOK level. This is the learning target rigor. So I'm going to look at each learning target and determine if it's a level 1, 2, 3, or 4 using those depth of knowledge documents that I showed you earlier. So when you are determining the level of rigor, always remember it's not about the verb, it's about the context. While working through the process, trust your professional judgment. Let yourself practice deciding these levels. They don't have to be perfect. You can collaborate with grade level peers whenever possible. Agree to disagree if you have to. If there's a question regarding which of two levels a statement addresses, like either a level 1 or a level 2, it is appropriate to select the higher of the two levels. Keep in mind, these can always be revisited and revised later. And you can also feel free to watch the previous video again or the DOK overview video again to get an explanation of determining these levels. So I did this previously in the video before, and I determined that all of these were a DOK level 1. Step 7 is to identify the vocabulary. Remember, you want to look at academic language and domain-specific vocabulary. Academic language are words that students will use across disciplines. So like summarize, I used that before. Domain-specific vocabulary are words that are used exclusively for your content area. So again, using your professional judgment, going through and highlighting the vocabulary words that your students need to know in yellow. So I'm just going to go back into my learning target here, and I'm going to highlight in yellow the vocabulary words. And now I'm giving myself a vocabulary list. So again, even thinking about, like I said, the word summarize before. Let's not assume they really understand what it means to summarize. They have to be explicitly taught some of these vocabulary words. And by going through this process, this helps us identify those words. And you want to think about the student's age and their previous experience. So for example, draw and identify. Those are fairly basic for a third grade student to know. All right, so now I have my vocabulary words highlighted, and you are done unwrapping a standard. So you complete this process for every standard you're assigned, but there's this important part. We have to link this document to the unit of study. Everything we do, we want embedded in our units of study. So everything is at a teacher's fingertips. So if they click on hyperlinks, it takes them directly where they need to go. So in order to do that, once I'm finished filling out this document, I'm going to go click on the share button in the top right-hand corner. And then I want to click on Get Shareable Link. You want to make sure that it's selected on anyone at East Porter County Schools with the link can view. You can, you know what, let's do can comment because we do want this to be collaborative. So anyone at East Porter County with the link can comment. Click Copy Link. Click Done. All right. Now I'm going to go back into my curriculum design folder. So here's curriculum design. And I want to go into my units of study. I just unwrapped mathematics, grade 3. So I'm going to look for third grade, math units of study breakdown, and I'm going to open that document. I'm going to look for the power standard that I just unwrapped in this document. And remember, the power standards are in bold at the top. So I'm looking for 3G3. 3G3. It's in here somewhere. There it is, 3G3. Now, once I locate the standard, it's important to note some power standards show up more than one time throughout the year. So make sure you look through the entire unit of study for your standard. If it shows up more than one time, you need to link it every time it shows up in your unit of study. So again, I just finished unwrapping 3G3, and I'm going to link that document I just completed to my units of study. So what I'm going to do is highlight 3G3, and I'm going to click the link right here. It says insert link. It looks like a chain. The text is going to be the standard number, and I'm just going to right click, paste. Remember, I copied the link, and apply. Now I go in here. It takes me right to my Unwrapping Standards Organizer. So if I'm a teacher in third grade, I can go in, click on this link, and this is going to help me with my lesson planning. Oh, here's my I can statements. This is what I need to make sure my students know and are able to do. So I know they need to be able to draw and identify And I have all these concepts listed. So this is really going to help with my lesson planning. And down the road, this helps with assessment building, especially when we start looking at the DOK level for assessment building. Once you have completed unwrapping all of your assigned power standards, please email me. I will be keeping a running list of who has completed their work. Once everyone has completed the unwrapping process, we will move on to big ideas and essential questions. You will be completing your unwrapping assignments during grade level meetings if you are an elementary teacher, or during the first PLC of each month if you are a secondary teacher. I am estimating we will be done by January, but that is flexible. It may be more or less depending on the work that gets accomplished during these periods. But I'm always available on Google Hangouts. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me immediately when you are unwrapping, so I can help you if needed. Um, so I'm really excited about this process. I think as time goes on and we continue to build upon our units of study, we are going to have a true comprehensive, rigorous curriculum for East Porter County School Corporation. So thank you all so much for your work and your dedication to student learning. Have a great day.